let's see. Do we have any public comment? Not you. Okay. Anybody else on there? Kevin, do you have anything?
Hi, everyone. Nothing to report.
Nothing to report. Okay. Louise indicated she'd be about 15 minutes late getting on. So we will go to chair's update, which I think brief here. We did send the cybersecurity recommendations letter to the county board, the one that we adopted at the last meeting. So that's been sent. We received no response.
Hey, Frank.
Yes.
Can we get a volunteer for the minutes before we dive into stuff?
Yes. Okay. That would be, that's on the, we do need a volunteer to take the minutes. Let's see, Jackie, how about you?
I just can't do it.
Mr. Smith, since you're a few minutes late, that means you get to volunteer to take the minutes. Are you okay with that?
Are you actually here, Jim? I thought you were landing. I think Jim. Hello, Jim. Are you here? Yeah.
Maybe he can't hear you.
Okay.
Oh, we can hear you now.
All right.
That was good. Oh.
All right. All right, Jim. You're at the airport. Jim, are you at the airport?
Delayed 8 hours and counting.
Oh no! Oh no!
All right, I'll do it. I'm just so pressed.
Oh, okay. Wow.
But I will.
All right. We've got a volunteer. Thank you, Jackie. Appreciate that. And we will deal with minutes later on, many of them. Let's see. So yeah, no feedback or response from the board yet on our recommendation letter. I don't know if you heard anything, but what are they doing?
I mean, the county manager saw it and he asked a few questions about it. You know, what does this mean? What's it going to be? You know, what's the ask?
Right.
So we talked about that a little bit, but I haven't heard anything else.
Okay, good. All right. We're on the record. So.
But he's not opposed at all.
All right. To my left here is Prescott Burton, who attended our last meeting, and he applied to join our commission. And John and I talked with him. He met with Libby Garvey, and he was on the recessed session of the board. We hope that he was appointed, but we've not gotten official word. So we're going to take the position that you're a guest tonight, but hopefully you will be a member by our next meeting.
Name again, please.
Yes, it's Prescott Burton.
Jackie, we'll have the transcript.
Oh, okay, that's
Yes,
great.
that will help. Yeah,
Yes.
take some notes, but that helps.
Just note anything that's.
Applied and
John and I have recommended that he be appointed. He met with Libby Garvey, our board liaison, and he was apparently on
just
the.
hasn't been on the agenda yet.
No, he apparently was on the recess appointments.
Oh, so he's been appointed?
Well, we have not seen.
We don't know yet.
Didn't say so, and it doesn't say so, so we don't know yet. But we're assuming. But all right. John and I spoke with Julia Berg, manager of programs for the Arlington Public Library, and Brittany Veland, who works with Julia, about a Tech Commission co-hosted book club, possibly with an author sometime in the future. And they're going to look into it. We made a couple of suggestions of possible authors of books, and I thought it would sound like a good idea. This is something that Tech Commission did a few years back at the Central Library, and we thought it would be a good opportunity for us to reach out to the community and basically do a book club.
So
Jim
the action is that they're going to work on it?
Yes, they're going to look into it and get back with us. Right? Anything more than that, John? I think that's pretty much what.
Yeah, they indicated that they were already kind of booked up schedule-wise for events for the fall, so we're looking spring or fall of next year.
Hopefully by spring, no later than spring. Let's see. Miranda Willis had a conflict tonight. So did Jonathan Adelstein. Jim surprisingly made it from. Are you at the airport in San Diego?
Yeah, my 12:52 flight is now supposed to leave at 9:30.
All right. From California, from San Diego. Or?
Yes, so that's I embark at 12:30 Eastern, 12:30 a.m. Eastern time. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, because we need to reflect where you're attending the meeting from. So.
Gate 48 at San Diego International Airport.
All right, very good. Well, we do have a quorum, both I think physical or at least.
Yes.
Okay.
We need John to read in his location.
Right, John. Yes, John. You want to read into the minutes your location?
Yeah, I'm participating from home via medical exemption as approved by the chair.
Okay. Yes.
Can you please read the names? I have Frank
Yes.
Prescott, but not counted for the quorum.
Correct.
Jim Smith, John Burke, Jackie Snelling. Who else do we have?
And now we have Andrea.
Sorry. Andrea.
Window.
Oh, yeah. And who else do we have? For the quorum?
Well,
That's it? That's
Gary.
the quorum? We've got staff on.
and Laura. And
Yeah, Laura Gross.
Oh,
Laura
yeah,
Gross.
okay, sorry.
actually, we have a physical quorum. Physical and
Okay.
metaphysical.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I'm a detail.
All right.
person.
All right. No, that's good. Let's see. I think that's our housekeeping. I think we're taking care of that. So that brings us to item number 4 on our agenda, the Broadband Resource Evaluation and Needs Assessment Report. Presentation, Jennifer Scout. Is it Scout?
Let's go.
Oh, Scout, okay. Strategic Projects Planner, Research and Strategic Initiatives Group, Department of Community Planning, Housing and Development, and Holly Hartel, who's no stranger to us, Assistant CIO for Strategic Initiatives with Arlington County. So we are grateful that you're showing up today. So we hand the screen and the table over to you.
Well, thank you so much for inviting us to present on broadband study. As you said, I'm Jennifer Scow. I work with Holly, but I work in the director's office in the Department of Community Planning, Housing and Development, on a variety of like interdepartmental type projects. And for the last couple of years or so, I've been working on digital equity, this broadband study, being a small team of interdepartmental staff as well as a small group of consultants on this effort. And so this is an independent third-party study, and I'm going to be using the consultant's slide deck to give the presentation. Over the last several years, Arlington staff had been looking at digital equity, looking at census data, speaking with community partners, exploring several different digital equity-based pilots. And we learned that there are inequities out there. There's stakeholders who are interested in this topic, and we also kind of recognize there's really no guiding principles or vision policies for this work. And so one of the things that that group they did at the time pre-COVID is they set this, we call it sort of a working vision, that all Arlington residents would have affordable, reliable access to high-speed broadband internet and the necessary devices and technology skills to fully participate in the community economy. And I say working because it's just sort of staff created and it's never really been adopted. So then COVID hit 2020, and certainly that underscored the importance of reliable connectivity when we were all forced to adapt across many areas of our life. And as the county, we implemented a lot more pilot projects because we wanted to meet an immediate need that was out there. And I would say if there was one silver lining from COVID, I'm sure there's a few that we all talk about, but one for this space is that we really didn't have to justify the need or importance of broadband investment and the need for digital inclusion and digital equity. It seemed really important. It was glaring in front of us. But while it seemed important how best to focus our effort how we solve for that digital divide, whether the internet should be considered a basic utility. What do we do about Connect Arlington, a huge resource that we have? All of these really big questions weren't really clear to us, and we felt like we were missing data to really answer that and information. There was still somewhat of a question, even though we felt like we had more of an affordable issue and a digital literacy issue. We weren't sure. We didn't know if there was also an infrastructure issue. And so while we knew a lot, we had a lot of information gaps, and that we felt like that was leaving a lot of unanswered policy questions on the table that was inhibiting decision making. So we embarked on this study, and hopefully that would help answer some of the questions we had to fill in some of those gaps. What do we have from both an infrastructure standpoint as well as a support structure standpoint? Is what we have meeting the needs now and in the future? We wanted more detail about the underserved. We knew some information, but we wanted to know more about not just households, but also businesses, which we knew nothing about before. And then what are the technology considerations? Do we look at fiber or 5G or fixed wireless or something else? And then what do we do given what we have, what we need, and then the cost to do it and the resources available at our disposal? So we hope this study is going to help Arlington make foundational long-term decisions about broadband investment in the county. And the focus of this presentation, as was mentioned before, it's going to be on the recently released report, which is one element of this overall study. And it essentially is kind of a state of broadband in Arlington. Next slide. There were a lot of different things that fed into this needs assessment report, a lot of data points. The consultants had used local data, federal data, data we hadn't ever used before, some that we had, like the census data. They had sent out an online survey that helped get some information that was difficult to glean from just the census data alone. And then they interviewed about 70 stakeholders from a variety of different groups across the industry. All of this combined, layered on top of each other, I do feel like it's given us a more nuanced picture than we had before, and it's going to help us make more informed decisions. Next slide. So one of the tasks of the consultant, as I mentioned, we're looking at what resources do we have. And Connect Arlington is a big resource out there that we had them look at. For anyone who's not familiar, it's a 70-mile network that's county owned. It's a maintained dark fiber network, and the primary purpose, reason why it was developed, and the primary purpose of it is really to connect our county buildings, this building, our libraries, our schools, other municipal uses like public safety and traffic lights. And as you can see from the map, it really doesn't go into the neighborhoods. It really is more in the commercial corridors. And that's because of what it's serving. And where you see that it is going into neighborhoods, that's because there's a neighborhood serving county facility, like a school or a library located there that it's connecting to. We did several years ago create this economic development ring that's highlighted in blue. It's 10 miles. And since between that time, I think 2016 and 2021, it really wasn't ever utilized. But then JBG Smith came with everything going on in National Landing, and they signed an agreement with us to utilize that for their work in National Landing. Next slide. Over the next couple of slides, I'll be just presenting some highlights from the FCC data that we actually had to get special permission to receive it and to publish it. And so this is property level data, which we hadn't had before. And we wanted to evaluate, I guess we wanted to use speed benchmarks as a proxy for quality. And we looked at two different benchmarks that are out there. 100 megabits per second download, 20 megabits per second upload. This is the federal target for being underserved. So anything less than that, you're considered an underserved location. We also looked at 100 megabits per second download, 100 megabits per second upload, or 100 symmetrical. And this is a fairly new target, and it's recognizing that there's since COVID, there's a growing need for upload capability. But this is actually a federal target for new construction projects that are receiving a certain grant funding. So, but we wanted to see how do we stack up for this underserved target and then this higher target.
Actually, I have a question about
Yeah.
the 100 symmetrical.
Yeah.
Is that considered like a minimum level or minimum plus? Or what?
Well, under the NTIA grant, it's 100 symmetrical or higher is the target to receive it. And actually, there's even language because it's really difficult to achieve it, and it's a lot of money to ensure you have the infrastructure to do so. They kind of have an out that's I forget the exact language, but yeah, it's 100 symmetrical or better. So we looked at both. And virtually all of Arlington, I mean, like 99% of Arlington has high-speed broadband at 120 or higher. When you hold Arlington to that higher standard of 100 symmetrical or higher, only 5% of our locations don't meet that target. Next slide. There's actually no real geographic concentration of those areas. So hey, it's 5%. Is that geographically concentrated anywhere? We couldn't find anything that says so. And all planning corridors are sort of, they're at the same level of service as each other. And I think the situation is improving as we speak because Comcast is undergoing a rather public upgrade to their Xfinity service this year to be able to achieve over 200 megabits per second upload. So once that takes place, only 83 locations will actually not achieve 100 symmetrical or higher. So it's pretty minimal. Next slide. We also have competition here in Arlington. How we're defining competition is where you have 2 providers or more. So when looking at that, only 5% of the serviceable addresses don't have more than 1 provider. And then again, once Comcast makes their upgrade, that's going to be, 95% of our locations will have 2 or more providers who offer 100 symmetrical service or better. They also, interestingly, they compared this to our housing data to give us some really interesting statistics and found that garden style as well as mid and high-rise buildings, they actually have a higher frequency of competition compared to single-family homes. And then there's no discernible difference between affordable housing and mixed income housing and market rate housing. They were all sort of at equal levels of service.
So one of the questions I know that we hear is from people in the high-rise buildings who say things are not available, but it's because the landlord won't allow more than one option. They contract with one.
Yeah, that was part of the study, and there's a section on there about exclusivity.
Right. And there's that's wireline service. Now there are wireless options which the landlord can't really keep out.
Well, and actually, it's funny because
and Star is, I guess.
Well, and also in talking with the consultant, we had a lot of discussion around this because technically all of Arlington has choice because of T-Mobile, because T-Mobile is everywhere and you can access that. But we asked them.
And I think Verizon's fixed wireless offering is Arlington.
But to your point about looking at various, I guess, property owner caused issues, they did look at that. And that was an issue going into the study. We wanted to answer that question. It was something that we grappled with as well. And what they found was, I think it was like a little bit over 1,000 properties that had a discernible sense that the property owner was causing sort of.
They signed a contract for one owner.
Yeah, they signed a contract for one only. And so there's a whole section in the report, exclusivity, that you can reference. But it wasn't as big of a issue as we had anticipated.
And just to clarify here, when we're talking about the number of services that are available, we're talking about that the service provider could connect their network to that address or that location, not that it actually is connected, right?
We're basically based on what's in the FCC data. So they have to say that they are available to be connected.
Right.
That's.
And then another thing I think is important to note here is that the location means building, not like
Yes.
housing unit, right? So one location could be a multi-unit building with hundreds of apartments, or it could be a single family home, or it could be a commercial building with businesses, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yes, but since you were making a comparison between the availability in garden style versus single family, that was type of building.
It's building type. Yeah, you can go to the next slide. And so, I mean, generally we have good infrastructure. And I think we knew that, and this study and having this new data confirmed that for us. Affordability and digital literacy, it's a much bigger issue in our county than is any infrastructure issue. But for affordability, there isn't a real good metric or benchmark out there that assesses affordability. So like, for example, in housing, it's common practice that you state that we shouldn't spend more than 30% of our income towards housing. And anyone who spends more than 30% is considered cost burden. And while no standard exists, organizations are starting to look at this. And there's some numbers that are being thrown out there. 2%, you shouldn't spend more than 2% of your income costs. Some say it's 1%. So our consultant can use the average of that. They use 1.5%. And they applied that to our household income. And where people start to be cost burdened by the internet is at about 50% of the area median, about 52,000 for one person, 75,000 for a family of four. National studies, they show that income and educational attainment, it's really the determining factor, and that when those things are held constant, there's no discernible difference by race. But in Arlington, we know that people of color, they're more likely to be low income, and that makes them more likely to experience internet affordability challenges, 2 to 3 more times likely to lack home broadband subscriptions, over 3 times more likely to lack a. You can go to the next slide. There are resources available for those who struggle to afford, most notably the Federal Affordable Connectivity Program, which it offers low-cost packages from internet providers, and then when paired with the federal subsidy that's available, you could essentially zero out your internet costs. But I will say that you have to income qualify, and the income is a lot lower than the need. So you can qualify for low-income housing in Arlington, but not qualify for the ACP because it's at a much lower income standard. So while it's important, and definitely it's underutilized in Arlington, it doesn't address the full need of it. Next slide. The next couple of slides, these focus on our digital inclusion activities, what we're doing here, what we're doing right, and what could be improved. So in addition to the household subsidies I mentioned from the federal government, there's a lot of community-based partners we have that are focused on this topic. A lot of them are providing digital literacy activities, a lesser extent offering and engaged in affordable internet activities, and then on an even lesser extent, there are some who are focused on device access. Next slide. So, some of the affordable housing providers, they're starting to offer in-unit Wi-Fi, free in-unit Wi-Fi or discounted Wi-Fi for residents. And some of them are partnering with housing or housing division to kind of help facilitate that. Libraries, parks and rec, schools, and employment services, Department of Human Services, they're all offering either direct or indirect digital literacy training programs. Arlington Public Schools also is working on a project where they are helping make connections for students who are in need. And they've said any student who has requested the assistance, they've provided that assistance. It started in COVID times, but because of the success of the program, it's extended on. And then lastly, I'll mention Biz Launch, which is a program out of Arlington Economic Development. They've been really successful actually There's a lot of demand for this program, but really successful at expanding digital presence of businesses. And there's a lot of digital literacy targeted to businesses associated with this program. Next slide. But we also, we're doing a lot, but we're not perfect. And if I could boil down the issues to three big things that they're going to say we need to work on, it's these three things. The first that I kind of touched on before, it's the underutilization of available resources like the Affordable Connectivity Program. In Arlington, like we only have 18% of our eligible households who are actually signed up and getting that free benefit. It's low generally across the country, but Arlington is slightly lower than that rate, and it's a little bit lower than the state of Virginia rate. Second,
The FCC has announced some additional funding for outreach programs.
Yeah. And second, we've done a lot, and we continue to do a lot, but it's all in sort of a pilot basis, and it's on a smaller scale than what is needed. And then lastly, county departments and external.
I missed two then. One was underutilization.
Yeah, so our second is that we are doing things on a pilot basis, one-off pilot basis, or it's at a scale that's smaller than it's needed.
You say doing things.
So we are doing digital inclusion activities. So whether that's stakeholders implementing a digital literacy program at their affordable housing property and getting residents engaged in offering a program, they're doing it, but because of funding, they can only do so much. Or we as the county, we've implemented pilot projects for a project here to test out an idea.
So is it the demand that exceeds the supply, or is it our view of what the demand is?
I think, well, I think the demand.
People are asking and not getting it, or there's not outreach so that they know it's available?
Or are they asking for the right thing?
Yeah,
Right.
I think on some level, for certain pilot projects we've implemented, I don't know that we fully understood what to do. And I think we're just trying to do something to move the needle forward. And I think that's part of what this study is about, is to hone those efforts in to really figure out what it is we should be doing and where we should be focusing our efforts that's most meaningful. So that's one thing. But then as I would say, the community-based stakeholder side, those that are doing things, there's a need out there, and I think the demand is exceeding what they can do with their resources that they have.
And three, since you said three, I want to have three.
Yeah. So the third thing is that we're doing a lot of things as a county. The various departments, I've mentioned a whole series and slew of departments working on digital inclusion. There's a lot of external stakeholders working in the community, but we're all kind of working separately for the most part on this topic. And there's no common digital equity policy framework to inform decision-making, priority setting. Go to the next slide. So this study and the findings that I just shared, this is just one part of our broadband study. It's one part of three. And these things will inform two other components to this project. So the first is underway. It's this model evaluation that's it's kind of technical, and it's going to analyze 4 different internet delivery models, offer up implementation considerations, costing, strengths, benefits, risks, and then following this evaluation, the consultants are going to prepare a final report. It's going to have strategic recommendations that the county could consider. And I just want to point out that this is not like the comprehensive plan that's put forward to the board and they're acting on it. They're not going to be acting on anything. This is really for informational purposes for us. The county has never actually put together anything like this comprehensive report of kind of what is broadband in Arlington and what should we do with all the different things that are feeding into it in one place. So it's an educational tool for us, and I think it's going to help spur conversation and hopefully inform how the county should consider building a foundation for broadband and digital equity policy. That's my presentation, and I'm happy to stick around for any more questions that you might have.
Those next steps will result in additional papers or?
It could. I think there's a conversation to be had with the county board, with county leadership, but they could recommend exploring one of the consultants' recommendations further, or they could recommend that staff maybe put together an implementation like action framework that's staff-led that would have more more into it as to how it would work, and that would be then presented to the board. But this is only the beginning, I would say.
Right, because I know that we expect that we'll have a role in perhaps engaging the public in some of this. So I guess we're just trying to get our head around time frame for those next steps.
Yeah, so we're tracking that this process would end in the fall. Hopefully the model evaluation will conclude end of summer, and then the final report would conclude in the fall. And that would lead into possible conversations about what to do next.
Yes, Jay?
Yeah, having listened carefully, I'm still not sure that I get a good sense of the scope of what has been identified as a concern. In fact, I think what I heard was pretty much everyone has access. Whether they know they have access and the resources is an issue. So outreach, let people know that they have or could get access. And secondly, that digital literacy is a huge factor. And again, that outreach and how to get people that digital literacy is a huge issue, as it is with any of these intransigent issues, like public health, as an example, where we have a similar 10-year mortality rate difference in one zip code. But it's not just, you can't just say let's just cure these 3 diseases.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you, is that, I mean, because that seems to me like what it really boils down to is not technology per se, but outreach and intervention strategies.
Yeah, that's what the consultants are concluding. That's what they're documenting through this process.
Yeah, this doesn't seem to be an infrastructure issue.
This is not an infrastructure issue, but that doesn't mean that, sorry, go ahead. I was going to say, that doesn't mean that their recommendations could include policy things we could do that are related to infrastructure, to still foster investment and to foster the kind of investment we want. So even though we don't have an infrastructure issue, that virtually we have good infrastructure, that there are still things that we could potentially do, and we're hoping that the consultant will be flagging. We suspect they will flag some things that are more policy oriented.
And this is part of the discussion for us internally in the county with the result of all of this. All right, you have these different models and you have a scale of how the model is going to be applied. And we're, based on what the consultant is saying, is this what we want to do? This is where the policy here, where do we want to target? And what does it mean? You can spend money on infrastructure to just maybe potentially solve some of the problems. Does that help? Is that going to move the needle the way that we want to?
Yes.
So for this committee, originally, and we've had a couple of different presentations where the point of the presentation was focused on public utility. And
Broadband authority.
Broadband authority, yes.
Which is the legal mechanism currently that's available to the county to possibly get this
something that's like a public utility.
Yes.
But what I'm hearing is not an argument for that. I'm hearing an argument that it might, unless I now hear more information, I've now moved to the point of the investment needs to be in the people.
Outreach.
And the
Sounds
outreach
like an
and the
education.
education and literacy. So it seems like it is much more, although one of the things you might find when you're doing that is that you find some technical gaps, but not necessarily access. Might be other kinds of technical gaps. But so that would mean, I would think that depending on different identification of different populations, either in location or demographics, that our partnership might then be with some commission that is not technology focused, but is demographic or education focused.
We have a hand, John.
Okay, John?
Thanks. I was curious to follow up on the statistic that only 18% of eligible county households that are eligible take advantage of the subsidy, the federal subsidy. And I was wondering if we had looked into why that is, because I think to Jackie's point, the infrastructure is maybe not the impediment, but it does seem that cost is an impediment. And we've heard that also from our friends at Arlington, the affordable housing team that ran one of the digital pilots, that cost is really the main barrier to getting their residents connected. And so the availability of the subsidy, but people not taking advantage of it. I'm curious as to why, if we think we understand why people aren't taking advantage of that.
All right, we have a hand, or do you want to answer and then got Kevin?
Yeah, I can let the staff answer that. I had another comment, but it's kind of related to what John is saying. So,
Okay. Oh, all right.
Yeah, Kevin can speak up.
Yeah, go ahead, Kevin.
Oh, okay, great. So I don't know that this will answer John's question, or nor do I think it was directed at me. But the 18% ACP take rate, I mean, we're seeing that kind of across the board, is that it's not as high as we'd like it to be, obviously. We do a ton of outreach, and I only speak for Comcast, by the way. We do a ton of outreach to community organizations that reach low-income residents that would be, eligible for the program. But also, this is just a hypothesis, but Arlington has a really awesome partnership that they created with APS that Holly was involved with. I worked on very closely with Holly and her team, and we connected well over 1,000 students to our Internet Essentials program. Because APS decided to continue with that, all of those people could have transitioned to the ACP. A lot of school districts elected to do that. APS decided to keep it the way it is, which is fine by us. So that means that they're not getting the ACP because there's no need for it, because the school district is already paying for it. That could be what's contributing to the slightly lower ACP take rate in Arlington. That's just one hypothesis, but I did want to point out the partnership that we have with the school district at the time connected all of the students that needed internet service, whether it was through Internet Essentials that we offer or the MiFi devices that the wireless companies provided too.
And Kevin, Comcast is committed to providing, I guess, what level of service for the $30 ACP? I know that they're providing full service essentially for the $30 a month subsidy, right?
Internet Essentials Plus, which is under the $30, is 100 over 20.
Right. So if anybody who uses the ACP with Comcast will have at least that level of service.
If they wanted it for free,
they won't have to pay anything more.
Exactly. But if they want a gig speed service, they'd certainly have access to that as well. But if they wanted to keep it for free, they could keep it at the Internet Essentials price. And I would point out, I think someone commented that just because you live in public housing doesn't automatically mean you're eligible for the ACP. That does mean you are eligible for our Internet Essentials program. So they typically go hand in hand. But if you do live in public housing or go to a Title I school, even if your student isn't necessarily eligible for free reduced school lunch program, all they have to do is go to a Title I school. They'd be eligible for ACP or for our Internet Essentials program.
So going back to the staff part of the question, I think this fits into what we're doing right now in the model evaluation, looking at the infrastructure side. Can you do certain things to make sure that service delivery is provided that could address affordability? So there's different options that we're looking at in the model evaluation. One of them is subsidies and what that looks like and how we're meeting those who don't either qualify for ACP, and then in addition, those who don't, to understand what would be the total cost to the county as well as potentially fitting in existing ACP. To the point also, there has to be more, communication, and that I think is probably going to come as part of the recommendation. And what are the different mechanisms, and how are you collaborating and working with the community groups that are already out there, in addition to what the county should be.
And to that point, Holly, too, the state of Maryland has an additional $15 per month emergency broadband benefit. So if you lived in Maryland, you could get $45 off of your bill. Albemarle County has one as well. I think theirs is $20 a month. So Albemarle is right outside of Charlottesville. So there are some communities that are doing additional benefits beyond the ACP.
So I think my question might have got lost there. The specific question was, do we think we understand why the take rate, the sign up rate for that subsidy program is so low, or is that something we still need to investigate?
So there's been some kind of uncovering of maybe why, but we can't, I guess, definitively say. But it's sort of this two-step process. You first have to verify your eligibility with the federal government. Then you go to the internet provider of your choice and get the package that you need. And so I think that there's a lot for someone to kind of manage and deal with. And I think that's one possible explanation. And what we know, and I know that they've improved things. The federal government has improved since the emergency benefit program. They've improved the ACP, which is a more longer-term program. And the emergency benefit program was just put in place during COVID to kind of get through that. But Holly had a lot of experience kind of helping with outreach there, and actually received a lot of calls. I think there's a lot of confusion as to how to sign up. So I think there needs to be a lot of hand-holding. And I think that there are, and that's why one of the things, one of the eligible expenses for the outreach grants that are out there is hosting sign-up events, because that is what is needed. It's hand-holding people through that process, but that's really time-consuming. It's really expensive. We haven't really done that. There's been partners who have done that, and they partnered with Comcast and others. I know that the Aging Alliance has done a lot of that, and so that's, I think, just digital literacy and awareness and understanding of the process and understanding what they need to do. I think also potentially language barriers as well, especially here in Arlington. That's an issue. So if we were to do outreach, just being mindful that there's outreach activities, events, and posted in various languages too to support those in need. Those are a couple that kind of come to mind from the research that we just completed.
Are the affordable housing advocacy groups and partners partnering on this?
Yeah, so they've been pushing out communication to their residents to make sure that they're aware, and we've kind of given them materials that they can push out. They've also, I know Arlington Partnership for Affordable Housing informs their residents of it, because we've also given them subsidy options. And so if the resident can qualify for ACP, then they don't need the subsidy that they're offered from housing. If they don't qualify, then that applies to them.
Welcome, Louise. Did you have anything to add from Verizon's perspective? I think you're muted.
I'm not really broadband conversant, but if you'd like me to get the person who is, I'm happy to invite them to a future meeting.
Okay, I think that might be something we'd be interested in. So,
sure.
Thanks. We'll let you know.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Louise.
You bet.
Any other questions?
So you saying that the individuals volunteered to help others understand the digital literacy or sign-ups and all that? You said it was expensive.
Well, it's expensive when you're thinking about outreach, it is expensive to host those kinds of activities. It's resource intensive. because you have to have a person there walking someone through, and it takes a lot of time. And there's only so much that one person, can do with another, with how many. There's only so many people that they can help in a given amount of time. So it's resource intensive for sure. I think that the Alliance received some funding to contribute to their outreach activities from the Department of Housing. They offer some pass-through grants from the Community Development Block Grant. So they have received some funding from us to use it, and this is one of the activities that they've used the funds for.
That's where when it goes back to the conversations about the models and the recommendations, and where are we spending our resources, right? It seems like in this conversation, we can spend our resources focusing on the infrastructure. Good, I'll always opportunity for improvement. But we're spending our resources focused on the digital literacy and the connected. There's still money that needs to be spent, right? There's still programs, and specifically what those programs look like. We haven't focused on kind of at the scale level, because we've been focused on what the infrastructure piece is. So I think what this is doing for us is to shift our mindset and focus our resources to understand, right, what are the types of things that we should be doing or partnering with, kind of at that scale level.
I'm wondering if they've looked into not only income levels, but maybe age levels, because I'm thinking back when the FCC had the HDTV conversion, they identified like the elderly, those with disabilities who were particularly disadvantaged or had a higher hurdle, many times because, not only because they had lower income, maybe they lived alone, and it was sort of a technical thing. And I wonder if there's a parallel here beyond just economic level, whether it's age-related or disability, that can account for why are we only 18%? That seems very, very low. Have they looked at that? I mean,
for the ACP data, I'm not sure if that's available. I don't know if we have data available that touch on demographics of eligible households and the use of ACP. But in terms of the the census data that's presented in the report, broadband subscription use and computer use, that is broken out by age, and they do touch on disability populations, and there's a discussion around that, and I suspect that there will be discussion and how to who should we work with and how best get them connected.
I'm thinking to the extent they look at that might help tailor the type of outreach that you have, because the way you may do the outreach to younger people, lower income, may be entirely different from elderly who are living alone, for example, or blind in some way.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, and particularly if you need some kind of accommodation before you can even read the screen.
That's correct. That's right.
And the numbers for Arlington are actually very good as far as the penetration of high-speed broadband. So I mean, we're talking about chasing after a relatively small number, and so the question is, how do you reach that? But how much? What resources are you going to spend on it? Because there may be people who don't want it. Right. I mean, there are people who say don't want it, don't need it.
One other thought: since we have a number of other areas that are life safety issues where these same populations are difficult to reach, yes, digital equity helps get people access, but it's the same barriers to access that are making it so that we're having trouble with outreach for public health and as the one that I'm most concerned about, mental health.
And having broadband helps facilitate telehealth, which is obviously very important.
But maybe this really should be more part of how the county thinks about a more holistic outreach program, that when they get in it, whether it's in a household or whatever, they're dealing with multiple things. So one of the other hats I do is I work with the Red Cross National, and they have a home fire campaign where they go into a house and install the monitors, smoke detectors, also CO monitors. But they're now thinking, okay, while we're doing that, we also need to be looking at some of the, 2 or 3 other safety things so that we're getting a bigger bang for that one-on-one contact. And even potentially doing block parties following, like target this particular block or region for the one-on-one and then get everyone together to talk about some of the other kinds of things they could do together. It just makes me think that maybe the model for outreach becoming more holistic could have a, and then you can bring in the volunteers more easily because you have the county presence, which for some is the security, and you have the volunteers, which for others is the security.
And I know that there's been discussion, at least at the FCC, about using churches and other type of community organizations for the outreach.
So I'm thinking of like the county's complete vaccine committee, which has now become the same model is being used for the preparedness. The new preparedness advisory committee is built on that same model.
Cross-departmental conversations.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And that perspective of digital equity is affecting multiple departments. It's
Yes.
much more efficient than focusing on just one department.
Yeah, and this is Kevin. If I can just chime in, I mean, we're kind of talking about the need for digital navigators, so people to kind of help others that don't have the digital literacy skills kind of get connected and how to use a computer, how to use the internet. So that's kind of what we're talking about here. But I do want to kind of point out the Alliance for Arlington Seniors, which I think, Kali, you brought up. They're really probably my favorite partner that we work with across the region because of just how successful their kind of outreach programs have been. Granted, it's a small scale. They've done numerous sign-up events where we and Verizon have been there to kind of help people get connected to the internet through the ACP. But what they're doing is really incredible work. I mean, they'd have vans pick people up from their affordable housing complexes, bring them to the Walter Reed Community Center, where a team of volunteers are helping them navigate the ACP process through the FCC. And then they send them over to the Verizons and the Comcast to get signed up. And that kind of model, if it can be scaled, I think it could be very successful. Montgomery County has gotten a lot of money to provide computers to low-income people. And Montgomery County is obviously much bigger than Arlington. But I've attended numerous events where 300-400 people are coming through there to pick up computers, and then they're being sent over to the various ISPs too. Comcast, Verizon, I think RCN is up there as well. And then even wireless companies is too. So those kind of sign-up events, they're time-consuming and they cost money, but I have seen them work.
And doesn't APS, the schools, don't they have a program to provide computers to the students who don't? I mean, they provide them to, I think, a lot of the students.
Every student
gets it, right?
I think every student gets it. I mean, my daughter's an APS student. She gets it.
Right.
Yeah.
They actually done a nice job too. So what they continued on with the program with Comcast, but they also recognize that some families that's still not enough, and so they still have the MiFis.
Right.
What they say is that everybody who's asked for internet connection has been served.
Sure. Yes. 100%. Good.
Which I think very few school districts can actually say that. So I think that's to APS credit.
But that's another way that you're, 1,000 that have stayed with APS is another thing that does subtract from the 18%.
Yes, and I'm only talking about Comcast people too. There's plenty of other companies that are participant in that could even make that number bigger.
John, you had a question?
Yeah, I was curious. I know in the report that spends a lot of time on housing units and households. It talks a little bit about businesses. Is there thought to address kind of commercial and business customers and access in a later phase of this analysis, or am I just missing the data on that in this one?
No, we had limited data on businesses. We have just much more data available to us related to households. We did talk to the business community, several different organizations and partnerships, just to get their feedback about what they're doing, what they're seeing. And then also, we talked a lot with Arlington Economic Development and the Dislaunch team, and that informed some of the report. We would expect in the recommendations that they would touch on the business community. And I think one of the findings, actually in terms of service, that was one of the findings it was on the slide, I didn't touch on it, but commercial buildings, based on the FCC data, they're actually at a slightly lower rate than others. It was a pretty minimal number, so I didn't really mention it, but they're actually at a slower rate of having that 100 service or better when comparing like the location types of residential versus business. So we do expect them to touch on it, and we would definitely push for them to provide some recommendations around that based on the conversations we had. But admittedly, we do have less information about businesses than we had wanted, and we just have more information that's available around households. Do you have?
No, I agree. That's true. I think I would expect that we are going to see. We know that there isn't a need. We don't have as much data, but we know that there is a need.
Okay. And then, Frank, if you would let me, my last question, my favorite question is, I noticed that you touch in the towards the end of the report on the lack of addressing broadband infrastructure in the comprehensive plan, and the fact that Virginia legislature has made that a requirement for municipal comprehensive plans. And I would say that we've noticed that as well and made that recommendation on several occasions. So I look forward to more kind of recommendations on how this issue can be addressed in the comprehensive plan.
Yeah, we fully expect that something like this will be touched on some level in their recommendations report.
Right, and I guess for us, it seemed like the issue of broadband authority was sort of what spurred this study, or was a big part of the motivation. So I'm not sure.
It's still one of the models we're going to
look at. Right.
It's
so I guess I'm thinking before we dig into that further, we probably ought to wait and see what you come up with. I think that would be my inclination. Unless anybody has any other thoughts around the table.
I mean, so what are we asking them to do? I mean, so once you go back, said something is summer, and then y'all, what are we?
Yes. Yeah. So the model evaluation is going to look at 4 different internet delivery models, ways of getting internet to the building, to the home. Okay. And it's sort of on a range of county involvement. So I would say the Wireless Service Authority is one of them. It's the most extreme. Okay, we've then identified the scale of the need. We're looking at 50% AMI households, because those are who are cost burdened. We're looking at those who lack quality, so the small amount of locations that don't achieve the 100 or better, and then those that lack choice, because we know from the needs assessment, choice matters to having a better experience. And so all of that is about 21,000 units combined. So we're looking at what do we do to fill that need, and how can we serve that need? We can be pretty extreme, set up a wireless service authority, run our infrastructure through the Wireless Service Authority, or we can use the existing private service and give direct household payments, utilizing ACP and others, looking at it with and without, since it's somewhat underutilized. We don't know if it'll extend beyond a few years from now, and then looking at it 100% leveraging, knowing that we should probably be doing more outreach and getting more. And so there's a couple of in between. We can extend our own infrastructure, but then have someone else kind of do the service. And then there's a partnership opportunity where more of the onus is on the internet provider, and we're offering less assistance. And so they're looking at those 4 options, and what they're doing is hopefully they'll kind of make it where it's easily understandable to anyone. I don't have to making sure it's easily understandable, but looking kind of cross-cutting, and it's not total apples to apples because they're all very different, but looking at what are the rough order of magnitude So this is not a deep dive looking at take rates, looking at a design. This is not what that is, because we wanted to look at all the various options because we didn't know where to hone our focus. So we want to look at that higher level, rough order magnitude costs, a lot of the the risks that are associated with each one of them. What are the benefits? How well would they address the need that we've identified? And then they'll make a recommendation as to which one they would recommend, or multiple ones, which ones they would recommend.
So I didn't get a good 1, 2, 3, 4 on that. Is that written down somewhere?
Yeah, actually, we've just published the framework.
Can you send that to us as well?
We can send it. It's also available on the Broadband Project website, but we can circulate that.
I think it's important to highlight that the risks aren't going to be solved for, they're going to be identified. This is part of the discussion with the recommendations. If you have these different four models and you have the high level cost, understand that these are the assumptions we're making and these are the risks. Yeah. It's for us to decide, okay, which risk do we want to bear?
Yeah.
So, but the available on the site, or what you could send, is a description of what the four models are you're going to be looking at?
Yeah.
And are the slides also available?
The slide that I just presented.
Yes.
Yeah, that's available.
That's a different presentation than was on the original website, right? I think.
No,
or it's
that's
the same one.
Yeah, he was literally pulling it up from
Oh,
the
okay,
website.
all right, okay, so,
Yeah.
so it is available to us. There is a web page for the study, and I sent the links to, I think, both the report and the.
And I saw the report, I don't think
Yeah, I think the
I saw
presentation was in
slides.
there. Yeah, I think it was a separate link.
It's the same.
But
Is what we
yeah,
just
if you
saw?
go look for the web, get to the web page. I think
If
both
you
of them are
query
there.
broadband study Arlington, it will take you right to
Right,
the page,
yeah.
and it's
Okay,
pretty
I looked
clear
at it.
where
Yeah.
it's.
And the four things in the framework are a separate link as well on there.
Yeah, it's called the Model Evaluation Framework, which is essentially, it just kind of tells you what's the scale of the issue, what are we doing, what the four models are, and how we're going to do it. And again, to Holly's point, it'll flag risks, it'll flag benefits and challenges, but it's not going to solve for those risks. And I guess at the end, as we're talking about these different options, if we are attracted to the wireless service model, then that one in particular would need more analysis. Like we couldn't just go into implementation. We would actually need to do some more research to kind of hone in what that an engineering analysis, more business modeling. But before we kind of paid for that, we wanted to kind of take a step back, look at things kind of at the 30,000-foot view, and kind of hone our direction a little bit better. So.
One last thing. One thing that I think I'm very excited about, and we're really digging into this stuff at a level that we haven't had before, and it's really complex. We spent a lot of time talking about this, from both the needs assessments now and the model evaluation. And it's complex for us, and so I can imagine for the average person, it's also very complex, and for those decision makers. And so to be able to put it all on paper and to be able to look at it and have these discussions, we've never had this all in front of us before.
And it's a very dynamic situation. It's constantly evolving.
Right.
Well, you've obviously given us a lot to think about here. Obviously, are there any more questions? I think probably from our standpoint, we want a model evaluation.
I just went to one of the web pages. It's the Arlington broadband study. Is this the correct one?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
It's not just the framework, it's also the recommendation.
Right, yes.
Yeah.
Right. So one should be this summer and the other by the fall. All right, unless any other questions, I think we'll go to Holly again.
Nice presentation.
Yes, thank you. We
very
really
much.
appreciate it. It's a huge 130 some odd pages, so it's very comprehensive. Safety and Innovation Zone, final report, Holly.
So
I circulated it.
You circulated it.
Yes.
We can bring it up if we'd like, or we can just ask questions. I know it's been a long time coming to get this information up there. A couple things I want to highlight. about the work that we had done is that it was a pilot effort for us to understand, for those of you who are not intimately familiar with it. The Safety and Innovation Zone is a body of work that we did with collaboration with the public safety team to understand sensor technology and how we can do that and think about privacy. Think about how we could do it without cameras. Think about how we can do it so that we can educate ourselves on what this technology meant and what it could provide for in a safe space. So we partnered with US Ignite, Comcast, as well as Virginia Tech and George Mason University to test out some technology and also test out our privacy, our fledgling privacy principles, which hopefully will be becoming privacy policy at some point, and to try to do it in a safe environment. The information, we had several different reports that we had been working on internally. So what you see in the final report that's posted is a summary. There's 3 components to that. One is an internal assessment working with all the partners. What did we learn? What were the lessons learned from it? The third part was a privacy panel assessment report summarizing kind of what some privacy recommendations. And the third part was George Mason University really dug into the technology and the data itself and what they were able to see and what they were able to find. Spoiler, there wasn't really data that we could use for anything, so a lot of it ended up being making sure we're understanding the accuracy of the data. Is what's in the sensor actually accurate and reflective, and is it appropriate? And do we understand that there's no privacy in the data itself? So when you think about the way that the sensor was gathering all the information, there was not a camera that was capturing information, it was capturing data. But could you take that data and could you figure out a person moving and how they were looking? And so spent a lot of time talking about that and making sure, well, how do we know it's accurate? So that was where most of the effort was spent. Nothing was ever operationalized, and at the very beginning, that was a conversation that we were focusing on. What it did do for us is understand the level of maturity of where this type of sensor information is, and to ask questions of, all right, for public safety, what's missing? What do we need? So the contextualization, one of the things that we were focusing on originally was fall detection. Be able to do fall detection without a camera, with the data, it's not there yet. Not that it's not coming, but it's not there yet. In addition to that, what type of information, in order to prompt a public safety response, contextual information isn't there yet, but it's coming. So what are the types of things that public safety needs to be thinking about so that they're ready for this information, that we were able to prompt that conversation in a positive way. Last thing, there's a presentation. I hadn't prepared anything. I think the partnership in working with the public safety as well as with Comcast and US Ignite and Virginia Tech and George Mason, was a good learning experience for all of us and a good use of our resources. One of the things I think it's important to highlight is the sensor data and the volume of data that we're looking at. Somebody needs to spend some time looking at it. Somebody needs to spend time making sure it's accurate, and we didn't have the resources to do that. And so partnering with George Mason was so helpful for us. Next, my last thing is on the privacy side. We were very cautious. We had a set of documents that had been created internally. Let's try this. Let's see if this works. Let's see if our privacy impact assessment is actually meaningful. Let's see what it means to, where are our risks? And we learned from that. Now we fed that information back through county channels, and we'll see what comes out on the other end. So I think for us, it was very valuable. I don't know if there are questions to everything. I don't know if y'all looked at what's online.
I did.
And if you have any questions, I'm happy to.
I had a couple questions that may be of interest for this group. First, what might be of interest for follow-up is that the NIST framework was used. Yes. And secondly, that one of the things noted, this was from the slides, so it was pulled out of the other, was the difficulty of dealing with privacy at a project level as opposed to an enterprise level. And one of our recommendations, I don't know that there is a privacy panel report. I guess that's one of the other things.
Yes, there is.
Okay, I didn't find that, and I know.
The report is, this has been a conversation. What you see is a summary, so that's what's available publicly.
Okay, but I didn't see that separately from what I was looking at,
So it's in the presentation and summarized in the document.
in a narrative form,
In
not just in the slides?
a narrative form too.
All right, I'll look for it.
So there should be 2 documents.
Okay, we should all, since we were part of the privacy panel.
Yep.
We should all look at that summary because we did not see the final. So the summary is in effect the public final of the work that we did. So that's one thing I think we want to look at that. But secondly, what is noted in the conclusions that dealing with privacy at a project level rather than an enterprise level is didn't say not productive, but it's challenging. It's very challenging, not ideal. So we did have a recommendation in the report that we saw. I don't know whether it came out in the final. That's what I'm saying.
So
it said that we should be doing an enterprise level privacy using the NIST framework. And so I want to connect those dots in terms of if we have to make it as a new recommendation because it's not in the summary.
I think we had made the recommendation at the
We
time.
did.
Yeah.
John.
Yeah, the letter that we sent Jackie at the time, because we kind of wanted to make our assessment and recommendations at the conclusion of our involvement, did include that recommendation at the time.
I thought it did. So all
and we reiterated it at the county board work session on the budget as the one that is the highest priority thing we thought the county should be doing that they weren't already doing. So
connecting those dots with the comprehensive plan and the references that are going to be in your next iteration of the report on broadband. We now have 2 elements of common principles under the digital equity, but also under privacy, that could be key elements in the comprehensive plan, and that this group might, continue to follow up on. So,
The access is.
yes, absolutely, the access. And so I'll have to go back. I did not see the summary.
So what's in the slides, that should be the same thing what's in the summary doc, but that just makes it clear. The privacy panel report is not out there, but it should be the couple of bullets that were selected from the privacy panel report.
Yes.
Should be reflective of what was most important.
So the other thing that was absent was any reference to the fact that the panels, that this item 2 privacy panel included participation by 2 commissions. And I did think, even though we had some issues about what happened to the report, we did put considerable amount of time and energy as commissions into providing that guidance. And I think we all thought it was a very good collaboration. So I think it would be appropriate to at least reference that your commissions were part of that. All the other partners are mentioned, but not us.
That's a little more complicated, and I think part of it goes back to the creation of the privacy panel, and the intention was back at the very
I know.
Right.
It was intended to be a conduit towards the privacy panel, not to create the connection. But what it did was it created a connection.
I'm not the how it says it and the nuances. Yeah. I completely leave to you whether it says they participated, whether they say we also consulted with. I don't care. I just think an acknowledgement is
for the record.
For the record.
For the record, an acknowledgement. And for you, that's important as well as it is for us. You did go to your commissions.
And again, the comprehensive plan could also include a framework for future That's right.
That's one of the recommendations there too.
Right,
Like,
right,
we have to
right.
think, now that we've done
Yes.
this, we have to make sure we're thinking through those connections, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's the point I'm making, is that several of the recommendations here, as well as even so far in the other one, are in fact things that should be going into the comprehensive.
Right. Right. I think one of our concerns back then was that there really wasn't a specific framework that took those various factors into account. But anyway,
We're learning.
we have a hand, John.
Yeah, I was just I didn't see it in the report. I know the fiscal impact of this was pretty limited because the equipment was donated, or it was lent to us by the owner. But was there ever an assessment of the amount of staff time involved? I think, and I ask because I think we are and included in our recommendations encouragement to do more of these types of projects. But the concern, of course, is that even if there's not significant fiscal impact, it does take staff time, and staff time is valuable. And so we want to have it be managed appropriately and focused on the most important stuff. So was there ever kind of an assessment of staff time that was invested in this?
No, there wasn't, but I would say that, it was tied in with the work that we're doing anyway. So it's hard to separate some of that out. I would still say it was not a significant effort on staff. It wasn't burdensome to a large number of people within the county. But there was not. Yeah, notice how I said that. And I feel like, there was not a count of staff time. And so aside from a select few, I do not know that it was a burdensome effort. And some of the work that we were doing was work that would be happening anyway.
Yeah, and we heard from Miss McMahon last week or last month on the performance parking pilot. One of the comments she made was that it's very hard for her team to find the time to do innovative stuff like the performance parking pilot without like a driver, without the funding behind it. And so I was just curious, like it's interesting to hear your characterization as being it was workable. It sounds like maybe you took on a lot of the load. But I think finding ways to create space for staff to do things like that, I think would be good. And I think the way to do that is if we're focused on things that are really high priorities, because then everyone can get behind carving out a little time to do it on the side, so to speak.
That makes sense. Also, the way that Melissa's role is structured and what she does is different from mine too. I mean, she does have operational duties that she's responsible for.
Of course.
Mine are more on the strategic side. I know y'all are very patient.
All right, anything more for Holly? Sis?
Have you gotten any feedback from anyone since it was posted?
No, and I reached out to the different civic assistants. Everybody that I reached out to from the very beginning, I reached out to just to kind of close the loop and offer, and I shared the report and everything that was posted.
Well, a heads up, I was focused on other things. I did not send it out to all of the groups that we were regularly communicating with, and I am about to do that, so you may hear from.
So I had reached out to
some of the people.
The courthouse, Clarendon Courthouse,
I was thinking of former members of EPAC, or who you might be likely to
be hearing from. Not heard from them in a while.
Yes, I'm just saying when I send it out, they're on the list. So
They've been literally decommissioned.
So
well, they decommissioned, but they're very active in the situation.
Yes.
So I do see and talk with them.
I did not send it to EPAC.
No, I know.
Yeah. No, I appreciate.
Since I haven't sent it out yet, they may not have seen it. They will now.
All right. I don't think we have any more action items on that. Do you see any action items?
I don't have the agenda in front of me.
No, I mean on final report. Of the safety and innovation.
I don't know. I think John, probably your expert on that.
Yes. I don't know, John, I don't think we need to do anything more on it, do you? Think we do?
No, I think, we made our recommendations and nothing in the summary, I think, changes that. It's all still good. I think the privacy aspects of that project were the best parts. And I think those and the idea of working with industry to do pilots and demonstration projects and learn is really good and should be carried forward. And policy should enable that to move faster. So long as the risks are managed and it's focused on community priorities.
Does this relate to the conversation, John, that you had with Economic Development Council about partnerships?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of part of the inspiration for the idea of could we develop this into this type of project into a more regularly scheduled programming in partnership with industry. As another toolkit, as another tool in economic development's toolkit. But that was just one of the options or ideas that we brought to them. So.
All right, no other questions. We'll move on to item number 6, July broadband session planning. I think given the report or presentation we had tonight, I'm not sure that it's really right yet for us to, I think what we had discussed was doing sort of a public forum on the broadband authority option of the model. John, do you think we should still go forward with that at the July meeting?
I think we should, if folks want to, after hearing this presentation and having access to the report, want to show up and make public comment, I think we should encourage that to inform kind of the reaction in characterization of the report. But I agree that any sort of, I don't think we're ready to make any sort of recommendations or actions as a commission until we hear phase 2 and 3 of the needs assessment.
Yeah, that's my thought as well. I guess
The question is are we going to do some kind of intentional outreach to get comments? Is that, I thought you were saying it was something like a hearing that we were talking about.
I think at one point, I think at one point we were talking about having speakers come to discuss the various viewpoints on municipal broadband.
Yeah, I don't think we're ready for that.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Okay. So when you say,
So
I'm trying to understand.
We had had the discussion. Well, I'm, I guess, looking to try to flesh this out. I think we had discussed at earlier meetings about doing something along those lines, getting the various viewpoints on that. I think we're not there yet. I think we're going to wait and see what the recommendations and the model.
But not advertising for people to come in and bring questions. Or that's what I was trying to get at.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually not going to be here at the July meeting, so I've had a conflict come up. So, John, it'll be your show if you want to do that, or I think we may want to come up with another topic for July.
Yeah, I think we probably want to have a different agenda topic, but of course, all of our meetings are open to the public and are available for public comment on any topic at any time. So,
of course, not necessarily to focus on this one.
Right, and I believe there is on the webpage for the report, there is I think a place for encouragement of input.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a submit feedback about it. It's about the needs assessment, but it doesn't really have whatever the feedback is, so we can capture it.
Right, but I mean, there is, I think, a place there on the webpage to do that.
Yes.
I mean, do you see any benefit in us? Although based on our cable franchise renewal hearing, I would say if a tree falls in the forest and nobody hears it.
I think it could be an interesting question when you have the
recommendations. Right. I think I think it's it's premature at this point. I think.
I'm interested in your thoughts on it.
Yes. Oh yeah. Anxiously awaited. I think. All right. I think John and I will confer on July. Which brings anything else on?
A reminder that July is going to be one of our 3 virtual meetings for the year.
which does, I guess, may have some impact on what we want to do for the July meeting. Real huddle, John, to try to figure that one out.
And date again?
For the July meeting, the July meeting will be July 26th. Right now at 7:30 virtually. Okay. Maybe we want to flip flop and go to the August meeting, but spike July and.
Do we have an August meeting?
No,
No,
well,
we're taking a break in August.
we voted to take a break in August.
Yeah,
We
I
usually
thought.
take July or August off, but in the past we've done one or the other. So what I'm saying is maybe we want to spike July,
virtual.
spike July and go to August.
As long as it's virtual.
I say we stick with the plan, Frank.
Stick with the plan. Okay, we took a vote and we're sticking with it. We'll come up with something. Something salient, important, and interesting.
I'm sure it's going to be on your list of FCC actions.
Oh yeah, I've got a few. I do actually have it, and I didn't do handwritten this. I went digital.
We're 2 minutes from the end, Frank.
Okay. Oh, well, I better. Okay, we'll go to legislative report here. I will speed dial it. All right. Virginia is going to receive nearly $1.5 billion in broadband funding through the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment, the BEAD program, whose goal is to connect all Americans to high-speed broadband, probably that 100 by 2030. At the announcement of the BEAD funding, President Biden noted that the White House is working with Congress to extend the Affordable Connectivity Program, ACP. That means that, but it did receive bipartisan support in the past, but there actually has been some discussion or concerns about fraud, and so there may be some additional strings or auditing.
Funding real quick, because
Yeah.
so the BEAD funding for us, based on, it's 100 over 20.
Right.
Only 4 locations in
Right,
Arlington qualify.
on the broadband map.
Yes. But what they've said is in Virginia, they expect that they will be able to satisfy the internet connectivity needs with the funding that's available. And then after that, they're working to make sure that that additional money could be used for digital literacy. And so so they haven't fully committed to that yet, but that's the plan. It would be kind of 2024.
That would be great.
So that's what we're starting to think about now. Is okay, we know we don't qualify for BEAD from an infrastructure perspective, but if there is money left over, how do we kind of start getting our foot in the door on the
Right, and there are actually, leads me to my next item. FCC chair, there are many buckets of money here. FCC Chairwoman Rosenworcel announced a Learn Without Limits initiative, urging her fellow commissioners to vote to allow E-rate allow E-rate funding to be used for Wi-Fi in school buses and to support Wi-Fi hotspots, so that school libraries, and schools can check them out to patron students in need. So again, this is using E-rate in the past hadn't been authorized for those types of uses, and they're really trying to stretch that and push that. Earlier this month, the FCC adopted a notice of proposed rulemaking to require cable operators and satellite TV providers to specify the all-in price for service in their promotional materials and on subscribers' bills in order to provide consumers with greater transparency and greater ability to comparison shop. FCC Chairwoman Rosenworcel has asked her fellow commissioners to support a notice of inquiry to learn about how broadband providers use data caps on consumer plans. The FCC has opened a portal on its website for consumers to share how data caps have affected them. The FCC is going to hold a public workshop on July 31st to explore the latest solutions, countermeasures, and opportunities for coordination to improve the security of the Border Gateway Protocol, BGP, which is central to the Internet's global routing system. According to a new report commissioned by CTIA, the Wireless Industry Association, Americans could save over $8.1 billion a year thanks to increased home broadband competition from from 5G fixed wireless access. 5G FWA accounted for 90% of all new broadband subscriptions in 2022. The FCC has established a new privacy and data protection task force. This FCC staff working group will coordinate efforts to protect against and respond to communications provider data breaches and consumer privacy infringements. Starry, a fixed wireless internet provider here in Arlington, will be exiting from Chapter 11 bankruptcy with a new CEO. Starry grew its network and customers nearly 60% from 2020 to 2022, and Starry is offered here, and I think their largest focus has been on the multi-dwelling units. Yes, and they use, actually, interesting bunch of frequencies. They use the former LMDS frequencies, which I think are in the 23 gigahertz band, so it's fairly high up there, but apparently it works. I know somebody who hasn't. It works. The FCC proposed rules to advance the transition to next generation 911 to help ensure that the nation's 911 system functions effectively and support the deployment of advanced 911 capabilities, including video, text, and data to help first responders.
Is that more money or what?
Actually, it's FCC rules basically to help continue the transition too. I think there was some legislation that would provide more money to that, but this is the FCC basically looking to facilitate that transition through rulemaking. U.S. Conference of Mayors has objected to portions of legislation that would set a 60 to 90-day shot clock for how long localities can take to approve or reject broadband infrastructure permits, saying it limits the rights of localities. In fact, I think the law firm that the county uses was involved with the working with the Conference of Mayors and objecting to that legislation. The FCC announced details for additional outreach grant opportunities to promote the Affordable Connectivity Program. The outreach grants seek to enlist targeted, trusted community messengers to develop innovative outreach strategies to reach unserved and underserved groups. Running over a little bit, but that's all I have this month. And I can actually, Jackie, I can actually send you my list.
Probably should have mentioned that.
Okay. Let's see. That brings us to DTS update.
Nothing
Richard,
to pass.
Huh?
Nothing to pass.
Nothing. Okay. Very good.
I do have a question.
Okay.
I was asked to request feedback from the folks in Teams land out there. Have you noticed any audio issues this evening? Broadcasting loud and clear.
Mostly the audio volume drops a little bit occasionally, but then it comes back in.
Okay, I will give that feedback. Thank you.
All right. One item for you. I saw the videos for all our meetings are on the webpage, but the one set of minutes that were approved weren't up yet. I think March was approved.
Okay,
I think I sent you a copy of that.
I'll go look.
All right. Which brings us to approval of meeting minutes. We've actually had a flurry of minutes. Yours were the only one approved so far, so you're the winner so far. But we have circulated, John circulated February. Did anybody have any changes for John's February minutes? If not, I will entertain a motion to adopt the February minutes. Second, anybody? All in favor of adopting the February minutes?
Aye.
And not from remote land? Do we have ayes there? Okay. Oh,
Aye. John Burke says aye.
I will abstain since I wasn't a member of.
okay. I think you were, but you weren't. I thought you were in February, but you didn't know it at the time. Okay, I guess it's based on that. Right, based on that, on the present rule. Okay. All right, we'll have you, we'll reflect your abstention there.
So for the count?
I think it was 7 with 1 abstention. 7 in favor, 1 abstention, I believe. The April minutes were circulated. I think I circulated them. Laura had significant input there. any other, since I provided my input, I don't have anything more.
I had an edit I sent.
And you had an edit, all right?
Singapore.
All right,
Singapore
so,
That's right.
anything else for the April minutes? Or April, or, no, that was May, actually, I'm sorry. I'm talking about the May minutes, we'll do April next. But May minutes, the May minutes,
I thought they were good.
all right? And that, yours.
I moved the
Right,
one for-
May minutes, I think, okay, so.
No, my edit was in the April.
Oh, okay, that's, okay, yeah, we're.
And Miranda.
Mixing. Yes, I'm blurring the twos here, so, conflating the 2 minutes, so, all right, well, anything more for Miranda? I actually put some additional edits there as far as people who were, attending or not attending, and she did actually make the change that I had, changed the spelling of my name from Zazo to Jazzo, so I was happy to, I did point that out. I was happy about that.
What a Scrabble score that would be.
Yes. Yes. So, okay, why don't we take April minutes? We have a motion to adopt the April minutes.
I move.
Okay.
Yeah,
Second?
Second.
with the edits provided.
With the edits, right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, I think that one carries eight, nothing. Okay, May minutes, that's the one that, okay. Any additional edits for the May, other than yours? I think
No,
right, or yours was
April.
April.
We're done.
Okay, April, okay.
I'm good.
It's clear.
Okay, May
From
minutes.
Singapore.
This is May minutes. Do we have any more further input? Then we'll entertain the motion to adopt the May minutes.
I move.
Okay, second? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, I think that's another 8-0. We're on the roll.
2 unanimous.
Okay, so I think we're only, actually, I went back to the videotape on January, and it actually looked like, John, you, and I think, because somebody off the camera, but I think it might have been you, said you were taking notes and you might get together on January, so.
Okay.
Do you and Laura have any notes on the January meeting? I will go back and do November. I will do November. We did approve December, so that can go back in the, I think.
I have notes.
Okay.
So I can cobble together minutes.
Yeah, you did. I said they're approved. December's approved, so it's,
I was the secretary.
yes. All right, I will do November. And then I think we'll be just about, and when Jackie does hers, I think then we'll be all caught up, so we're getting
So we
there.
just said,
So we're gonna get 3 new
January
ones.
meeting, John has them for November.
I will do.
So John is doing January
Yeah, with help from Laura's notes, I guess.
and Frank is doing November.
And I think we'll have caught up on all our outstanding minutes. We're getting there. And we'll get them up to the website.
How do you get the transcript, not the video, but is that a special request thing? You're the one designated.
Richard can provide it.
I can email it.
Yeah.
Can you email it for today? Can you email it to me?
All right.
And the other thing is a list with the correct spellings for the members, so that when I indicate who is here, I have the correct
Right.
spellings and I don't get
I
Zaza.
think that, don't we have I thought we have the roster on our
I think it's
webpage.
there now.
Yeah, it is. I think it is.
It's
now.
on the
Absolutely.
webpage.
Maybe when you send documentation, some link via email, you got it.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, but that's, not
Well, so-
everybody has their full names on their
Yeah.
Oh,
emails.
okay, yeah, that's right.
It is it's a bad time that we actually do it. I think we still don't have the terms on there, right? I think that's something that I think Kathy O'Malley is supposed to maybe put together, I think.
Yeah, I don't have that data.
That hasn't
Yeah.
been there for years. It says the term. and
Right,
stuff like
yeah.
that.
Yeah,
It's
I
just
know.
not that.
At one point, it was all up there and correct, but yeah, it's probably time that we get an updated roster with terms. Hopefully you've been appointed and we'll get you in there to then work to get all the terms right. That brings us to good of the order. Any other miscellaneous? No, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? All in favor? All
Aye.
right. Good meeting, everybody. Thank you all who attended and those who attended virtually.
And happy 4th of July.
Yes.
Happy 4th of July. Bye.
Good luck with
All right.
United. Is it United Airlines?
Good for you, Carly.
Thank you.
Not looking good.